For the 100% cheapest coins on the internet with reliable delivery and quick customer support, check out my sponsor MMOEXP by clicking the link at the top of the description and use code SWIFT at checkout for 5% off. Salted family, and today I'm coming back at you guys with another Madden video on the channel, and in today's video we are going to be predicting the Madden 22 Ultimate Team Core Elite running back rankings. Now in this video I have devised a tier list. Every single starting running back has the potential to land on this list, and what I essentially did is look back in Madden 21, look back in Madden 20 to figure out how many running backs were able to get an 86 to 88 overall card, 84 to 85, and so on and so forth. My dog is barking so much right now. If you guys can hear it, I'm sorry. So let me know where you guys think I'm wrong on this list when you guys finish watching the video. Let me know where you think I'm right down below in the comment section. Obviously, I'll try to reply to every single comment as I typically do, and let's get straight into this one. Now, over half of the starting running backs in the NFL actually end up getting a core elite to start the game off. I didn't know there was that many of them until I actually looked back in previous games. So as we get started with this like 80 to 81 overall list, there's some players that aren't actually all that good that end up getting elite cards in Madden. So let's get straight into it, boys. Essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start it off with the 80 to 81 tier. We'll work our way all the way up, and then we're going to put in any of the snubs at that kind of bottom tier, or players that maybe should have gotten a card but didn't find themselves on this list. So starting it off, we have Melvin Gordon in the lowest tier. I would expect him to get an 80 overall player. This is a little bit for name value. EA tends to give a little bit of bias when it comes to name value, but generally this is based on how they did last year. And next up, we got Antonio Gibson. This is actually a player that I really like in the NFL. I'm super stoked to see how he does next year, but he's a super versatile running back, great in the passing game, great in the running game, and I feel like he really came on at the end of the season. Wasn't all that amazing at the start of the year. I think there was a little bit of competition in Washington's backfield. I know they have JD McKissick as well, and I think he was getting snaps earlier in the year, but Antonio Gibson ended up playing really well at the end. I could see him getting an 80. And next up right here, we have by far the most questionable player on this list. I'm going to put him as an 80 overall player, and that is going to be Cam Akers. Now, Cam Akers is very similar to Antonio Gibson, where there definitely could be a little bit of bias at the end of the season. Cam Akers, in the playoffs for the Rams and in the last couple of weeks, he was absolutely incredible. I remember him against the Seahawks, absolutely gashing them, and I believe it was like a week 17 that might have been. And then moving right along, we have Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders only played 12 games last year, but if he was to play all 16 of the games and start all of them, he would be way higher up in this list. He was actually really efficient last year and put together a fairly solid season. Obviously, he didn't play all the games. If he played all 16, I could see him being like an 83, maybe even running back, but he put up pretty solid numbers, so I could see him getting an 80 overall card. Wouldn't be surprised to see him there. Then moving up in overall, we have the first of the Browns backfield making the list. It is going to be Kareem Hunt with maybe an 81 overall card. The fact that him and Nick Chubb are able to put up such good numbers and they're in the same backfield is literally wild. Reminds me of the Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram days back in the day, about 3 years ago. But I'm going to say Kareem Hunt probably ends up getting maybe an 81, but I could see him in the 80 to 81 overall tier. Next up, we have a guy that definitely has all the talent in the world to become one of the best running backs in the NFL. That is going to be Joe Mixon. I could see him getting an 80. He was nicked up last season, but 2 years ago he actually put a solid season together. I could see him getting an 80 overall player. I can't see him being a gold, and to be honest with you guys, as we go through the list and we put all these players in their tiers, there's not that many players that could contend for this 81 overall spot or 80 overall spot to knock off some of these guys. And then ending this one off, we have a Ronald Jones. I would be shocked if Ronald Jones wasn't an 81 overall. I could definitely see him being higher than that. Wouldn't be surprised if he ended up getting like an 82 to 83. This honestly could be a little bit low for Rojo, but this is what I've got for the lower overall 80 to 81s. I'm fairly confident about a lot of these picks. Cam Akers could end up moving down and Rojo could move up, but that's what we've got right now for the low core elites. Now moving it all into the 82 to 83s, this section of the list has some of the most underrated running backs in the NFL in my personal opinion, and we're starting it off with James Robinson. This man was like a top 5 rusher, I think it was, in the NFL last year. He was really usable in the passing game, and the fact that they drafted Travis Etienne, it does not make sense to me at all. I think James Robinson, he should be the starter in Jacksonville, but who knows what they're going to end up doing. I could see him getting an 82, maybe an 83. What a great season for him. What a good story as well as a UDFA. All right, moving on in this section of the list, we are putting in Zeke Elliott. You can't tell me that he was higher. I don't think he's going to be lower than this. I think Zeke probably ends up getting an 82 or 83. He obviously didn't have a great season last year. The offensive line was banged up. Dak Prescott got injured. It was just a really tough season. Zeke was incredibly inefficient as well. He put up up solid numbers, but was super inefficient. I think he ends up being an 82 to 83. I don't think you can really argue that. And next up, we're also putting Saquon Barkley as an 82 to 83. Obviously, Saquon was injured for a portion of last season. That puts him a little bit lower down in the list. Obviously, if he played a full season, he probably gets an 84 or an 85. If Saquon is healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. It's just tough to give him a higher card in Madden because Madden tends to go off of how the player did last year. And then next up right here, we have Josh Jacobs, similar to Zeke, an incredibly inefficient runner, but he puts up really big numbers. I think you can't put Josh Jacobs lower than this. I don't think you can put him higher than this either. As we get into those players that are a little bit higher overall, I don't think you can really move him up or down. I think 82 to 83 is a good spot for Josh Jacobs, and it feels like every year Josh Jacobs gets like an 82 or an 83. Every year he puts up similar numbers. I would expect him to stay in this range. And then ending it off right here, we have one of the most underrated players in the NFL. It is David Montgomery, slotting in as hopefully an 83 overall card. He played really well last season. I'm super excited to see how he does next year, especially if Justin Fields ends up being the quarterback. I think Montgomery has to slot in this list, and I think the 82 to 83s, this is a fairly solid section. Some underrated players, a few overrated players, and that's what we've got right here in this section. Now, continuing on to the 84 to 85s, we have 4 players going in this section, and there is one player in here that is very controversial. I am going off of how they did last year, and I'm putting this guy as an 84 overall running back, partly because he played really well, and partly because I would be absolutely stoked to see him get the card. He would be incredible when it comes to being an 84 overall card in Madden. Jonathan Taylor had a great season last year. I am all in on him for fantasy football this year. I think he's going to play really well this year as well. Jonathan Taylor, obviously they have a good defense in Indianapolis, and he ends up getting a lot of touches because of that, and he played really well as a rookie. Ended up having over 1,000 rushing yards. He was one of the top 5 rushing yard players in the NFL last year, if I'm not mistaken. Double-digit touchdowns, a really underrated season. I think he gets an 84. Obviously, maybe one of those players that's an 82 to 83. They could move up and bump him down. Maybe Saquon, maybe Zeke. They could end up getting moved up higher just because of their name value, but based on how well they played, Jonathan Taylor has got to be in this section of the list. Now, next up, because of injuries, we are putting CMC in the 84 to 85. Obviously, Christian missed most of the season last year. He's probably going to get like an 84 or an 85 overall player. Obviously, he did well in past years. He was one of the best running backs in the NFL, if not the best running back in the NFL 2 years ago, and for that reason, as well as the name value, he probably ends up starting with an 84 to 85. And next up, we have a couple of fairly underrated players in the NFL. I would say these are probably going to be the 85 overall cards. We're starting it off with Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb definitely gets an 85. I couldn't see him being an 86. I think that's a little bit too high for Nick Chubb, but I could definitely see him being an 85. I just don't think he slots into that 86 to 88 tier. Obviously, he had an insane season next year, but there's only 3 players we can put in the 86 to 88, and I feel like those players are more likely to get a higher overall card. Now, continuing to the next player right here, we have Aaron Jones. Insane season for Aaron Jones as well. He was just great for the Packers last year. 85 overall for Aaron Jones. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets an 85, and I would say that section of the tier list, that's in order. We have Jonathan Taylor, we have Christian McCaffrey, we have Nick Chubb, and we have Aaron Jones. I'm actually ranking those players in that order as well, based on how well they did last year, so that is the list for the 84 to 85s. Now, moving it on to 86 to 88 overall players, we are starting it off with AK-41. This is really the only guy that you could argue might get a lower card than Aaron Jones, but looking at how well AK played last year when it comes to rushing, when it comes to touchdowns, when it comes to receiving, he was an absolute demon for us, and I would be surprised if he was lower than an 86. I think he ends up getting an 86 overall. AK, one of the best running backs in the NFL, probably a top 3 running back in my personal opinion, and he gets a top 3 Madden card based on how well he did last year. And then next up, we have 87 overall Dalvin Cook, who feels like he kind of goes under the radar when people talk about the best running backs in the NFL. I don't know why people do that. Maybe it's because he's on the Vikings, but Dalvin Cook was insane last year. 87 overall for Dalvin Cook. You cannot contest that. And then finally, this one is very easy. We have Derrick Henry as the 88 overall running back. Again, no real contest when it comes to who is going to be the 88, and that is who I've got in the tier list, boys. There's definitely some players down there in this bottom row that we can look at maybe moving up to the 80 to 81 overall tier, but otherwise, I'm confident about the highest tier. I'm confident about the second highest tier, and I think all the tiers look fairly accurate to me. Let me know where you think I'm wrong down below in the comment section. Let's put in some players in the high gold that I think could end up getting elites. Now, here are the 3 guys that maybe could end up getting an elite card. We have Chris Carson, we have Kenyon Drake, and we have Austin Eckler. Chris Carson, as well as Austin Eckler, seem to get good cards from Madden fairly often. They definitely have more name value, and then Kenyon Drake put together a good season last year, but that is going to do it for the running back rankings. Let me know where I'm right, let me know where I am wrong, and until next time, fellas, I am out. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.
Those hustlers out.